Good afternoon, everyone. It's like, what time is it? Thank you all so much. This is such an amazing event. We're so excited to speak up here, an amazing group to talk to you about emerging tech. I know that there's a whole bunch of different people in this room, and emerging tech means a lot to different people. And so I'd like to sort of start with a bit of a run down the line level set, if that's okay. So I'm going to ask our panelists to give me a 2-ish minute overview on your field. I'm going to give you some prompts. 1 to 2 sentences describing your field. What's the most exciting thing that's happening? Why would an expert or a layperson care? And then what do you perceive to be the biggest barrier? And so, Kristian, I'd like to start on that end, and we can come down.
So I do AI. I don't know what to say. AI is, strangely enough, AI is not an emerging technology. It's emerged a long time ago. So everyone in the room, you probably interacted with an AI system maybe a dozen, probably 24 times today. And for me, it's like, why is it now in the fore? So I hate to do this. I'm going to ask 2 questions. One, who has used ChatGPT? Just hands up. That's great. Hands down. Who used its predecessor, GPT-3?
Ooh.
Really? Surprisingly large number, maybe 10%. That's why AI is at the fore today, because we have an AI system that is the most has the fastest adoption rate of any system in history. And it's a consumer system, but it got everybody excited about what it could be for the enterprise. For me, what's the most exciting thing that's going to happen next is you're interacting with a system you can talk with, and it seems very, 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 very human. It's amazingly fluid and fluent. It lies like a bastard, but it's very good at that. The most exciting thing is integrating that capability, the fluency, the conversational capability with all things data. So you can have a conversation with it and it's fluid, but it's about your company, your data, the data that drives the world, and that can be given to the hands of people who are regular folk, who don't know about data, don't know about data science, don't know about analytics, but now have access to the information the machine has had for years and years and years. That's it.
And what do you think is the biggest barrier there?
The fact that people think they already have that.
Got it.
That when you interact with ChatGPT, you think it knows things it doesn't know. It doesn't know anything. It doesn't know anything. It knows the next most likely word. That's what it knows. And sometimes that actually corresponds with truth, but in a world of change, it often doesn't. And that's the thing, is we are transfixed by a glorious piece of technology that does something that we think it does something that it doesn't do.
Awesome. Kate, same question to you. 1 to 2 sentences describing the field. What is the most exciting thing? Why should people in the audience care? And what's the biggest barrier? This is getting increasingly difficult because we got quantum. We're going to revisit quantum because it's a little bit complicated.
I have the opportunity of not having to do the technical side because I'm going to just pitch it to Manish. So I'm Kate Timmerman. I'm CEO of the Chicago Quantum Exchange, a consortium of universities, national labs, and industry that started from a place of academia. So I would say it used to be a field focused on quantum information science and engineering, and more has become a sector. So actual companies selling products, industry adoption, that kind of thing. The thing that keeps me working late at night while my spouse is watching The Traders or The Challenge or whatever is the fact that this region has like an ultimate, not even the possibility, but we are like one of the 2 top regions in the nation for quantum information science and engineering. And so we have the potential to turn what was an academic field into a real economic driver for the region. And even as I'm saying this, I'm getting goosebumps. I find that incredibly compelling. It's also incredibly hard. And it's wonderful to have kind of a broader community here in the region really moving that forward, including the governor. So that's what I find most exciting. I think kind of in terms of challenge, every single person you talk to is going to have a different challenge. I think the technology, it is definitely an emerging technology still. There's a lot of technology development that is still needed. Lots of hardware and software developers working really hard on that. I think that's going to happen, right? It might happen faster, it might happen slower, but the crucial thing and one of the huge opportunities for our region is the opportunity to kind of pair that development with industry sectors and the different industry sectors, particularly the ones here in the region and nationally. And I think getting those industries to adopt quantum technologies earlier, not only to advance their business, but because it will then drive the technology forward faster. I think that's a huge opportunity. I also want to give a really great shout out to the Economic Development Administration in the US, which recently awarded 31 tech hubs across the nation, 2 in quantum, and one of them was here in Chicago. That's another thing that keeps me motivated.
Awesome, thanks, Kate. Colleen?
Yeah, so I have a little bit of a different focus. I work for Constellation. We're the largest supplier of clean power in the US. We supply 10% of the nation's clean power through a combination of nuclear, hydro, solar, wind, and through that, my team leads corporate strategies. So we're always looking at emerging technologies. How are we going to transform and reach our climate goals? This is a huge challenge. We've got a lot of challenges ahead of us. Like last year in November was the first time we breached 2 degrees C. That's not like an award. That's not something we should be proud of. That's very scary. This was the warmest winter since 1950. So we have substantial challenges. So what am I excited about? I'm excited about the growing commitment to climate change and the growing commitment to clean power. So we can see that in the policy transformations and the commitment from policymakers. There was $370 billion of funding from the Inflation Reduction Act. And McKinsey estimates that that's equivalent to about $9 to $12 trillion of investment in clean energy by 2030. So that's really exciting. And then we're also seeing a growing commitment from large corporates, billion-dollar companies that are making commitments to the clean energy future. So 2/3 of the Fortune 500 have made climate commitments, which is a really substantial investment, and we're really excited about participating in that transformation.
That's awesome, very exciting. As I said, quantum is a little complicated, so you get to revisit it with Manish. You can talk a little bit more about the technical side. So same questions to you.
Hi, everybody. Oh, yeah. Took a second to turn on. I'm Manish. I lead the team at memQ. We are a Chicago-based startup. We're developing hardware in the quantum space. The thing that's most exciting about quantum, so all of you are familiar with computer. Everybody's got computers in their pocket. The thing that made computers possible is that we got really, really good at controlling the flow of electrons. So moving electrons between 2 points, and those 2 points kept getting smaller. Right now it's around 2 nanometers or so. We know very well how to control the flow of electrons. So bulk flow of electrons, we're very good at that, and that has led to this breakthrough technology called Gen AI that everybody's very excited about today. We are also very excited about that. The next frontier in our engineerability, as a civilization, as humans, is the ability to interact with single atoms, to control the properties of single atoms, and harness that to do useful information processing, to develop new materials, to do new drug discovery. That's where the power of quantum lies, and that's why we are in that field. That's what I'm most excited about.
What do you think is your biggest barrier?
In quantum, one, there is so much happening, and there's so much support for this this area from the state, from the national level, internationally. There's so many breakthroughs happening on a maybe not a daily basis, but on a monthly basis. I'm not afraid of anything in this field. I think we'll be able to engineer our way through it.
That's awesome. That's a very fun, optimistic way to end the run down the line. Thank you all for taking a minute to share with the group. I'd like to, we sort of talked about each of these individually. I'd like to ask the full group sort of what are the connection points you see between these, right? These are all emerging technologies. They're likely somewhat intertwined. So what do you see there, whether it's just one feeds into the other? Are there common goals? Sort of open up to the group, whoever has a thought on that.
I'm happy to jump in. So the intersection of energy, quantum, and AI is twofold, I think. There's one, which is the intersection, one part of that is power. So BCG estimates that 7% of our total demand for power is going to be coming from data centers by 2030. That's a substantial growth in demand over time. What's exciting about that is the commitment from people who are investing in data centers to buy clean power and support the clean energy economy. One of the other converging areas is the opportunity to use AI to help us solve our climate challenges and to use quantum as well. So how can we do that? There's a DOE project called HIPPO where they're using AI to advance grid dispatch to improve the clean energy dispatch of the grid. So being able to use AI to advance some of our clean energy objectives. We have an AI project within our company where we're using AI to advance our nuclear fuel composition. I'm not a nuclear engineer, so I'm not going to go much further than that, but very exciting project. Happy to talk about that further as well. But those are kind of two conversion points that we see.
Anyone else in terms of how you either work AI and quantum or with energy?
So quantum computing is a little hard because it's changing very, very rapidly. Some analyses think that certain platforms of quantum computers will be a lot more energy efficient. And so I think there's another potential thing. That said, we have to see, just because the rate of development of quantum computers is moving forward at such a fast pace.
In this, I think AI is the enemy. Building out large language models is incredibly compute intensive, incredibly time intensive, incredibly energy intensive. The rough estimate was that for the development of the language model that is underneath ChatGPT, that is GPT 3.5, that the energy involved in that would be the equivalent of enough power to power the city of Phoenix, Arizona, for a month. And then ongoing utilization is very power intensive. And I think one of the things that is good for AI is that because people are aware of this, they're trying to drive towards what are thought of as smaller models that are easier to train, use less power. And actually the market, because you can't sustain a product that's that expensive, but the market is trying to drive down the utilization of these really large models to get smaller and smaller models. At the same time, there are people who are working on larger and larger models because we're so excited about artificial general intelligence and building things with human capabilities. But something that, that's as smart as we are, but uses up, a third of our energy every day, is probably not the greatest of ideas.
I can quickly add one thing, right? So AI feeds into quantum really well in the sense that you're building an engineered system from the ground up. So you're going from systems that are 10 qubits, 100 qubits, 300 qubits, to 10,000, 100,000, to 1,000,000 qubits. That's where AI we see it playing a really important role building control systems and helping us engineer and getting that cycle closed faster.
Great, thank you. I'm gonna actually, Kristian, head back to you. I know you started with sort of GPT. I want to go back to that a little bit because we've talked a little bit about, what's here, how do they connect, and Kate, as you started talking about a little bit of like how does this end up being more of an economic development play, how is it getting to consumers, things like that. I want to start with ChatGPT because it obviously, there's a trajectory for adoption for AI that ChatGPT changed that trajectory or sharpened it or however you want to call it. And so I would love for you to speak a little bit to that. I think overall the group, as you've used it, probably knows, but how is a consumer sort of driving the technology behind that? How are you seeing that this is now a public platform? How is that changing the technological backdrop of what you're doing?
Well, I mean, it really is. AI has been transformational for a lot of fields for a long time. But this is the first time that a new AI technology is actually transformational with regard to AI. It comes down to You have a little conversation with ChatGPT and you go, wow, this is great. I bet I can use this in my company to do the following. And you do that, I don't know, 100 million times. And suddenly the companies are all demanding the technology. And the issue really becomes, even though there's that demand there, how do you harness the wonderful language skills and the fluency of these models in the enterprise? Because it's a consumer system. It's not designed to be truthful. It's not designed to be particularly robust. It's not even designed to be data safe. And so how do you take that core technology, though, and morph it into something that the enterprise can use? But that is the question that every single CEO, I mean, we launched, November 30th, 22. By the end of January, every CEO in the country was like, how are we going to use this? Because they saw people using it. And that's an incredible driver. And it has meant that everyone in the field, even those people who were not working in large language models or foundation models in general, everyone in the field had to attend to that and start thinking about how do you take this tool and attach it to all sorts of other tools. And there's a tiny thing here, which is really not a tiny thing for Chicago, and that is we are now about to enter an era of integration for these technologies. And the integration is going to be driven by business, and the integration is going to be focused on the enterprise. And that's a thing that, if we think about Chicago as a tech hub, that's the thing we do incredibly well. We did not invent language models here, but we can actually invent the effective utilization of language models here, and let that be the core of what we are, who we are. Because, it's, dare I say, we're the city that works. And it's making this stuff work for us. That's the next step.
That's awesome. Very quick follow-up on that last little bit you said. Who needs to come into that conversation for that integration to happen? Does it happen within the AI folks, or do we need sort of everyone in this room to be, all the sort of technologists in this room to be part of that?
I think it's. I think that there are a suite of skills that are associated with integration. You certainly need to have people on the business side actually understand what their problems are and how they can address those problems with these technologies. On the product side, you have to have people who are not willing to just take one technology and go with it, but are thinking in terms of how can we actually build new kinds of systems. And certainly people on the engineering side, because, my God, it's such a sweet technology, and everybody wants to use it. And it's like don't use it to add numbers. We know how to add numbers. We have machines that add numbers really, really well. So why don't we use those machines to add numbers, and then we'll feed the results of adding numbers into these machines. And this idea of modularizing and thinking that way is something that the engineering community has to really embrace. And we got to get over, this is Eric's comment before this, we have to get over it. We have to get over we didn't invent this one thing. Because if we can get over that we didn't invent this one thing, we can show everybody how you can take this one thing and put it as part of a much larger system. And so it's the entire suite of going from the C-level through management and the different divisions, all the way through product, all the way down to engineering, to get to that point where it's like, I'm not just going to pound on a language model for the rest of my life. What I'm going to do is I'm going to think about how to use it, how to make everything else I do better with it. But it's one component of dozens of components that all have to be brought together.
I think this is just a really interesting point, though. So we've seen over the last year like a dramatic increase in projections around AI. So like that drove a almost doubling in load projections from an energy perspective. But from a corporate perspective also, now there's like everybody's trying to figure out, how do I use AI? Like, how am I going to use AI to deliver value? And when you start asking that question in corporate circles, everybody's struggling with like, well, you guys just told me I can solve all my problems with AI. So how do I go do that now? And I think people are really waking up to the fact that you're right. Like, AI is not going to solve every problem. There are different solutions for different problems. But it's an interesting corporate challenge because we've seen such a dramatic change over the last year.
It's this we shouldn't have business. We shouldn't have business driven by the headlines in Forbes articles. I mean, and it's like AI will change everything. You will be left behind. And I have to admit, I gave a talk to a board of directors of a large insurance company earlier this week, and I was followed. And I said, look, be very careful. I mean, move forward, but be very careful. And that is, think in terms of what is it that your business needs, and what kind of data do you have, and what kinds of solutions can you build by integrating these things. And by the way, here's what this technology does, and here's what it doesn't do. Please, 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 just attend to that. And I was followed by a consulting firm that said exactly the opposite. They said, you should be afraid. You're falling behind. You know, we've got everything. And it's just like, no, you haven't. No, you haven't. And this is a place where, and in fact, my contact there, I said to her, it's like you keep thinking that leadership means that you're in front. No, leadership is attending to the real problems, attending to the real solutions, and building the right thing. It's not utilizing a piece of technology that you think does one thing, it doesn't, and you get sued. That's not leadership. That's, I don't know what that is, but it's not leadership.
Okay, so takeaway from this conversation is don't get sued, maybe. I'm not sure. But I would love, sorry, Kate, please respond.
Yeah, of course, I have opinions. I think the really fun thing about this is because quantum is more of an emerging technology, we get to see everything that's going on with AI and, you know, kind of attend to that. I think one of the really interesting things, Forbes has been having articles about the use of AI well before November of 2022, but a lot of, you know, C-suite leaders were not actually attending to them. What happened in 2022? You know, we had ChatGPT, and even though it was a consumer-facing product, all of a sudden businesses started attending to that. I find that to be very, and while yes, people are still trying to figure out how to use it, and it is not a perfect system yet, it is driving further technology development. I think that's a really interesting kind of case study to see how we can use that similar model for quantum technologies, right? How can we kind of raise general awareness? What is the ChatGPT moment for quantum, particularly quantum computing, to get, not only to get the general public interested, but really to get those C-suite leaders interested, being aware that, you know, quantum computers are still kind of in their toy phase, and being willing to spend a little bit of time and energy developing the use cases for their business. So when and as the technology develops further, they're able to adopt it and, you know, adopt it for real use, rather than waiting, you know, 2 years and still trying to figure out what's going on. So I think that's something that this region has a huge opportunity to do. I think because of our diverse sectors, you know, there's a huge opportunity. Now, this region in general does not have a history of early adoption, but I think that between, you know, the startups, between the academics, and between those diverse sectors, there's a huge opportunity there.
Manish, are you thinking about the ChatGPT moment for quantum?
Wouldn't that be cool? Quantum, by the nature of it, is comes off as an esoteric kind of technology. So if I go to a business executive and I tell them, "Are you thinking about quantum technologies?" Right? The doors are like almost immediately shut. But the way to approach is like
It's always open.
great to know.
Connections up here on stage. This is great.
The way to approach with quantum would be, and that's like kind of wearing into that ChatGPT category a little bit, is what are the problems that we have been able to solve using this? Are solutions to these problems something that you're looking for? Is that something that can help your business case? Because the technology-wise, quantum is like, I think at a level much simpler than the large language models. We understand it. We understand it really well. LLM, we don't really know how the training's going on there. So coming from the quantum side, I think our technology is a little simpler than the other side. But yeah, like in order to get to the consumer, get the utility across, we need to be able to connect the technology to a use case, to the demonstrable advantage that it brings.
I'm going to pivot just slightly, but take sort of some of these principles of the speed at which this is growing and turn it to you, Colleen. In terms of, we talked a little bit about the energy requirements and things like that. What are you considering as either something like ChatGPT and AI just push forward full speed, or quantum is getting there. What are you thinking about in that space?
Yeah, I mean, I talked a little bit about this. I think there's the power demands and what you choose to believe as well. Like we've seen dramatic increase, as we've talked about on the panel over the last year, and how much of that is going to come to fruition versus kind of taper out as the reality of the use cases and all of that comes to fruition. But what we're really excited about is the opportunity to support this industry, because data centers and the digital world are transforming the way that we interact with data, with everything, the way that we're going to transform the future. We're going to, solve cancer, and we're going to solve the climate challenge, and AI in the digital world is going to help us do that. So by powering that with clean energy, I think that's really where we're focused, is how can we support the growth of that economy while also maintaining a drive to a climate and clean energy future. So that's really where we're focused. And then I also talked about just the value that we've seen and with different AI use cases, and of course, recognizing that not every use case is for AI. So, looking at those opportunities as well.
I think there's, in sort of this type of emerging space, again, the speeds are very different in all of these, and whether it's supporting or how you're driving the energy forward, whether it's AI or quantum, there's no real blueprint for some of these, right? You're all sort of right at the edge of the space, and you're pushing forward. And so I'm curious how you all are thinking about like ethical hurdles that you might be facing. What are those hurdles? What do you want to make sure is addressed? Like, what should we all be thinking about? And how do we, it's an opportunity, right? So not to be all negative, it's an opportunity to build inclusively. These are all spaces where we can come in and we are there, we can do it. But how do we make sure that happens? What are you thinking about? What's in your conversations on that?
Yeah, I can kick us off. I mean, I think with all technology innovations, we end up facing some ethical challenges, and this one's no different. I may have spent an inordinate amount of time over the last couple of weeks trying to figure out where Kate Middleton is, and is that like the best use of our digital infrastructure? Probably not. But we are going to see dramatic transformation and value from these technologies, both quantum and AI, and being able to help support and deliver on that value while managing the ethical considerations, I think is just something we all have to be very focused on.
I think it's Catherine. My kind of two immediate reactions are for quantum computing. Quantum computers right now are very powerful, well, though at the early stage, but incredibly expensive. So expensive that only people and organizations and countries in power have access to that. So identifying ways to democratize that access is incredibly important. It is definitely a piece of the EDA Block Tech Hub that we submitted, and then also, of course, workforce development. I think many of our fields and sectors start off as these sectors and fields which are really only accessible to people with PhDs. But as technology develops, we all know that the number of people with non-PhDs that are employed in these fields increases dramatically. So again, one of the reasons why we are aiming to build the largest community college focused and led set of quantum education and training programs in the nation.
I'm sorry. Yeah, AI is nothing but ethics. So AI, it's based upon machine learning. And of course, machine learning is I'm looking at a whole bunch of things that happened yesterday, and I'm going to use them to predict or advise you about what you should do tomorrow. And that really works well if you liked what happened yesterday. But if what happened yesterday was messed up, then what you're doing is you just build a messed up at scale machine. And I have a personal frustration. So I run the Center for Advancing Safety of Machine Intelligence. And so this is what we think about. I have a particular frustration because people are saying, well, it's moving so fast and we don't know how to regulate it. And it's like, I'm sorry, you didn't regulate the first versions of this technology that popped 25 years ago. And you haven't paid attention to all the things it's done to date. And now, because just in the same way that CEOs got excited about AI, regulators got excited about AI, and they're thinking, what should we do? What should we do? And it's like, why don't you go back and take a look at, I don't know, the use of image filtering in Instagram has caused a rise of depression in women ages 13 to 23 by about 7%. Online addiction exists in the framework of an engagement model based upon I'm going to give you what you want, and you're going to keep wanting more and more and more of it. Recommendation engines actually slowly but surely, and not even slowly, erode our ability to make decisions, and are particularly impactful for children. Recommendation engines have been with us for 30 years, and we still haven't done anything about them. And what I worry about in terms of ethics is our getting very, very, very upset, and then doing nothing. And there's harm after harm after harm that we've seen. And I have to admit, in terms of energy and climate, there was a moment I was excited about COVID. Because I thought COVID would teach everybody about exponentials, and they'd see that something starts small and then gets big, and then we didn't learn that, because you'd have people, and then you'd have governors saying, well, I know it's happening in New York State, but we only have 10 cases here, so why would we worry? It's like, it's going to get bigger. And we just don't attend to things that look like they're down the line or long term, and in particular, when it comes to ethics and harm, we don't attend to things that look like they're emotional or mental, and that's where AI and technology, digital technology, hits the mark, emotional and mental distress. We have to decide that what we're going to do is look at the world from the point of view of the technologies are unreal, wonderful. They're phenomenal. We could not function without them at this point. But then we have to consider we couldn't function without them at this point. And what does that mean in terms of understanding their harms and understanding their benefits and doing something that is more reasonable than getting panicked about the existential threat of AI giving us Arnold Schwarzenegger showing up and killing everybody?
Lots of good sound bites from you today. That was a good one in terms of takeaways. No, that really fascinating, and I think it's such an interesting sort of tangential take to a lot of the ways we do think about the ethics, which is, again, how are people not getting left behind through workforce or training or things like that. But I think there's a real value in thinking about how you build that capability or that capacity into the technology of either making people aware or thinking about what those type of concerns might be in advance, so you can, I don't know, fix them. I'm not really sure exactly what, but where do you all see, if you're thinking of that perspective of it, right? Like there's definitely a perspective we need to teach people about the technology and get them involved and be represented. But when you're thinking about how do you get sort of the voices of the concerned into that development process, right? How do you all think about that? Or have you thought about that? Is that something your fields are thinking about at all? Besides Kristian, who is very much thinking about it.
For us, that is, like a new sector is emerging, so we're very much aware of the representation part of it, and we're working on it. But this other aspect, like the use cases are not, it hasn't come to the forefront yet for us.
Would you, since it hasn't come to the forefront, not to put you on the spot, but since it's so early, how would you think about building that in now so that there is, it's sort of just what you do when you build these new use cases? I'm totally putting him on the spot. I'm sorry. I didn't tell him I was going to ask him this.
See, like I'll have to get out of the mold of thinking in terms of hardware and who builds it. So one thing is like, what do these quantum technologies get used for? Like that's the when you start thinking about use cases, that's where that is it going to be used to engineer the next bioweapon, something like that? Like is that so? Those are where like the first thoughts come to. But the idea there would be like like a building in, I guess like the part about regulators come in, right? So building in some sort of guardrails there that you can only do certain things, and you can detect malicious intent when you're using a quantum computer to design a virus that could like harm a bunch of people. So that's the negative side of this. Like, it's a very powerful technology. It can help you build new catalysts that can reduce the amount of energy you use in producing, the fertilizers. But at the same time, those same catalysts could go into other nefarious things. So that's where the ethical and these regulator considerations would go into.
I'm going to come back to Chicago again. You can't anticipate. There's a whole thing, and I'm going to say something I hate it when people say. You can't anticipate everything that could go wrong. And the reason why I hate when other people say that is they usually say, oh, you can't anticipate everything that could go wrong, so we're not even going to think about it. But you can't anticipate everything that go wrong, but once something goes wrong, you can respond to it. And my model for this is that people will say, AI is the new electricity. It's going to be everywhere. Everyone's going to use it. It's going to be utility that it will change the world. It will transform the world in the way electricity changed the world. And I absolutely agree with it. But AI is the new electricity when electricity was the new electricity. So when electricity was new, we had the Chicago Expo. And it was great. And Westinghouse came, and Westinghouse ran 10,000 lights and had refrigerators and motors running, and it was the most exciting thing in the world. And we saw what electricity could do for us. And then some wires heated up, and they burst into flame, and 12 civilians died, and four rescue workers died. So we had 16 people dead. And no one looked at that and went, well, we need to have ethical electricity. They didn't say that. They said, all right, we want this. How do we make it safe? And making it safe didn't just turn into regulating electricity. It turned into design and development. So the nature of material science, electrical engineering, city development, architecture, all changed because of electricity and our desire to move it through our systems and make it safe. And it suddenly turned into not just a one moment in time, but let's make it safe. Because we want to think about the impact, not just the technology, but the impact of the technology. And that's, again, that was a Chicago thing. It turned into Underwriters Laboratories. And they're a Chicago thing. And it's like, we could do that. We could do that with quantum. We could do that with AI, where it's like, no, we're going to make it safe. And not because we dislike the technology. It's because we love the technology. And in order to move it forward, we have to make sure we do not kill any more people. And that's for me the big thing. I love AI. I really don't want it to kill anybody.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to say, I mean, all of these technologies are dual use, right? That's like a synthesis of I think what a few different people have said here. And fortunately, there are very smart policy and other experts out there who have seen this and we are attempting to work with to bring them to the conversation and help develop the technologies simultaneously. Does it always work seamlessly? No. But I think it's a process that you have to go through with each different technology type.
Nice. I think that's a great call to action for us broadly and sort of the way the Chicago mindset of things in our region. I know we're coming to a close, so I'd love to have the group sort of. My initial question, very transparently, was going to be like, what are you optimistic about? But I think you all were very optimistic at the very beginning. So I kind of want to, well, except for Kristian, who...
Oh, no, I'm not optimistic. No, you don't get to say that. You don't get to say I'm a pessimist. You don't get to say that.
No, you're not.
No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Inspiring.
I'm saying these things are happening. That's not pessimistic.
You're not
That's like, you don't see it. I am aggressively, powerfully, painfully, embarrassingly optimistic. I think AI can change us as a species, but it's like raising kids. You want your kids to be smarter than you are. You want your kids to be more successful than you are. You do not want your kids to kill you. Those three rules, I think everyone has, and I have the same attitude towards AI.
Fully feel your optimism in that statement right there. Thank you. I was going to ask what you wanted to leave the group with. I'm not sure if that is what you want to leave the group with. If it is, I will pass it along to Kate. But otherwise, what would you like to? What would you like the group to take away from what you said today?
I think we are on the brink of utilizing a technology that will genuinely be transformational for us, and I really do believe as a species. But as we move forward with it, you have to promise to do two things. Figure out what it really does. or 3. Figure out what it really does. Figure out what it can do for you. And then ask yourself, what are the risks? And just do those 3 things every single time you look at a new technology. And if you do that, we'll be in a really great place. But if you don't, and you get bullied into using something, and by the way, Google messed up with their image generation. Google was bullied. Google was bullied. Think about what it takes to bully Google. Google was bullied into launching technologies that they did not want to launch. And it's easy to get bullied, but don't let yourself get bullied. Ask the question, what does it do? What does it do for me? What are the risks? Over and over and over again, until the technologists you talk to can answer those questions for you.
Great. I'm gonna kind of focus in. I think there are kind of 2 easy takeaways. I think one, in your professional lives, have a conversation with the dozen or so quantum companies here in the region and the hundreds of academics. Have a conversation. Figure out, hey, what is this quantum thing? When should I start attending to it? So I think that's an easy takeaway on the professional side. I think on the family life side, in addition to ensuring that your children do not kill you or other people, read them like a board book on quantum, of which there are many, just to get them kind of quantum literate at early stages. I started reading these board books to my son when he was like 5. He can say entanglement and superposition in his sleep. He's so comfortable with them, it's ridiculous. Because that next generation is going to be incredibly crucial for this future workforce.
It's so hard to follow. I'm less concerned about my children killing me than I am about us creating a world that kills our children. My first son was born in 2020, so he's going to be 30 in 2050. So we talk about our climate goals, like 2050 is a really long way away. 2050 is like the beginning, right? So I'm optimistic that we're making significant advancements, and quantum and AI are going to support those advancements, of course, used in the right way. We have substantial changes that have come, substantial challenges ahead of us, and I'm try to be optimistic that we're going to meet those challenges head on. And places like mHUB and supporting folks like the work that's happening here at mHUB is one of those critical opportunities, as well as partnering with folks who are at the cutting edge here trying to solve these big challenges.
What I'll add is quantum is not new. Quantum has been around, like Einstein, like around that time was when they came up with the theory. The processes we have been able to harness since that first laser was invented. We use it on our GPS. It's there. It's up there on the satellites. What companies like memQ are doing today is we are bringing that technology. We have evolved to a point as people in harnessing those technologies that now it's getting out of the lab onto chips into the real world, where you can now harness properties like superposition, entanglement, which maybe doesn't mean that much to you right now. But these are fundamentally quantum properties that we are now beginning to harness to do things like computing in an entirely different way. This is not how we think about computing today. The entire way of doing math with this is different. The entire way of doing information processing with this is different. And the second point, if you need help figuring out like what it can do for your business, we can help you there.
Awesome. Thank you all. Thank you so much to you all for your time and listening to this. Thank you so much to the panelists for this great conversation. I think our big takeaways are very much the technology is exciting. It's out there. Learn about it. Ask a lot of questions. Be inquisitive. Don't let it or your children kill you. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Meera.